So I'd like to officially welcome you to iMoot 2014 and thank you ever so much for presenting again as you have in previous years. So Kristina is going to be talking about open badges in Mahara and Moodle. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Vinny, for the introduction, and welcome to everyone here in this session on the second day of iMoot. I'm really happy to see all of you in here, and also some names and faces that are already familiar to me. So the plan for today's session is that we are going to look at open badges in both Mahara, the portfolio system, and also Moodle, because Moodle already has it in its core functionality since Moodle 2.5. And for Mahara, we have plugins available that are currently in development by Eric Roussel and from Descendum, a Finnish company that works with Mahara. And so what I want to show you today is also not just what badges are, where they are being used for, but also how you can get your badges into Moodle and then also display them in Mahara. Because currently that is kind of the possibilities that are available. But also just very recently, Eric published a plugin which allows you to actually also issue badges directly in Mahara. So we'll take a look at this initial development work so that you have an idea of what can come your way in the future for both platforms. Okay. So just a quick word about badges in general. For me, they are representations of competencies, skills, achievements, anything where learning was involved. So of course, oftentimes we know badges more from Boy Scouts or Girl Scout or also gaming community. But now badges also make it into education, into the learning sector. And what I found over the last month when we've been talking with people about badges, that some of them aren't really kind of comfortable using them because they have this connotation of being used for gaming. But actually, when you look at it more from a certificate point of view, it does really make a lot of sense to issue badges. And in a couple of minutes, we'll be looking at the anatomy of a badge, and then it will hopefully become clear for you that badges are actually can also be seen as certificates. So for me, as I said, they are representations of skills, achievements, competencies, or also formal learning. And as you can see here on this picture, these representations can be for small things, so individual skills, or you can actually also put a lot of skills together or give it, issue a badge, for example, at the end of the course. So here at the iMoot, badges are being used in various different scenarios. So for example, already attending the conference, having signed up for it, you get a badge. When you are a presenter, you earn another badge. And when even already putting in your Twitter username earns you a badge. So now I'm actually giving away some ideas of how to earn badges here on iMoot, but most of you will have already earned at least 2 of these badges by now. And the iMoot team also has a number of other possibilities for earning badges, for example, by the number of forum posts, and also presenters can issue their own badges, as Vinny just told us. And so this is a nice way of really customizing what you get a certificate for, or just also a proof of that you have participated in a session or that you have looked at certain content. And that's why I think open badges can also be used in education really nicely. So in formal education, that way badges could be used to certify the participation in a course, or even having gone through a number of courses in order to earn a degree. And it can also be used within a course to certify individual steps towards a common goal. And open badges are already being used in a number of formal learning contexts. For example, in New York City, the Department of Education has the DIT, so the Digital IT Initiative, and that allows a number of public schools to issue badges to its students who go through work skills and who try to achieve certain things so that they then earn these badges and can really show off what they have worked on. Furthermore, in the tertiary education sector, UC Davis, for example, is one of the case studies that is being used by Mozilla Open Badges to illustrate what is possible with badges in formal education. There in the sustainable agriculture and food systems area, the researchers are setting up a badging system, so not just looking at a single badge, but at a series of badges.
You are now unmuted.
I'll just mute people so that there's no feedback coming through. Sorry about that. And yes, UC Davis is developing an entire badging system so that the badges work with each other, that you can also progressively work on things, and that it can really also be incorporated. And Shalimar, fantastic. So you know UC Davis really well. I actually also attended that university for a year during an exchange program. So I'm really, really happy that UC Davis is one of the premier examples that are currently looking into badges. And yes, I forgot to mention at the beginning, please do feel free to ask questions in the chat, or when we have a little bit of question time, then also grab the microphone so that we can try to answer them. Richard just has the question whether I know whether there's an age restriction for signing students up for the Mozilla backpack. I'm afraid I'm not aware of that, Richard. I would assume that it's probably 13 years like for many other sites around the internet, but we'd have to check the terms and conditions there. Another formal learning context where badges are currently being explored is in Germany at Ford University, and they also look at creating a badging system to use it for educational purposes. Currently, open badges or badges in general are still more frequently used in informal or in non-formal learning contexts. Because there it can be less controversial because you issue it for certain skills or for competencies in extracurricular activities. And there, just to give you a few examples of who's using badges already. For example, the Mountain Lakes High School Online Academy, they look into skills that their students have learned. Just very recently, Pittsburgh in the United States as well announced that they are also looking into badges for the Pittsburgh City of Learning. And that would then allow students to participate in activities and earn badges for those so that they can also then showcase their skills and competencies. And if you have already looked into open badges at some point, you are most likely familiar with the initiative from last year in Chicago, the Chicago Summer of Learning, where there were hundreds of activities available for students to go through during the summer and earn badges on these, to then also put them, for example, on web pages and showcase what they have done. And this year, a similar initiative is going to take place in Los Angeles, and that's called the Los Angeles Summer of Learning. And so these are just a few of the initiatives in more non-formal educational context, because they are not being issued for coursework or so, but more for life skills, digital skills, for example, also work experience that especially students can go through and then work on. Now, in the beginning, I said We can look at badges in the sense of what we already know potentially from the gaming background, but could also use it for educational contexts. And I believe that is really, really possible, and we should not relegate badges just to a gamification aspect of coursework, only because it has the term badge or a nice image, but really look at the metadata that actually sits behind that image. And that's why I really like this image here from Mozilla, the badge anatomy, because there you can really look inside a badge. Because the open badge is not just an image, but actually there is a lot of metadata embedded in it, so that somebody looking at the badge can then verify it. And that is the really important aspect compared to somebody else or somebody just making up an image and making it very pretty. Open badges has metadata embedded so that we actually know what the name of the badge is, why we've earned it, what the criteria were for issuing this badge or for earning this badge, who the issuer was, and also whether there's any evidence available that we can check to really look at it, why people earned it. And then we can also see when the badge was issued. I've read out the two additional things that are available as metadata items in a badge, namely standards and tags, because those are currently not being used by Moodle. But all the other things we can already use in Moodle directly in order to issue a badge. And so while a badge can kind of look really pretty on your iMoot profile page, when you click on it, you get access to all that additional information. And for me, that is the important bit, because that way you can really verify, yes, somebody participated in it. Yes, I was really the presenter of a session, or I was an attendee at a conference, and I'm not just making it up. Because while we have the certificate module available in Moodle, where you can create your own certificate and then save it as PDF file, somebody could actually come and make a change to it and then put that into their CV. Whereas with the badges, when you put them online, you always have that underlying metadata there, which allows you to verify that, yes, this badge or this certificate was really, really given to the person who is claiming to have earned it. Do you have any questions so far for the badge anatomy, or also in which context it is being used? Just pausing briefly. And as mentioned before, always please feel free to put any questions into the chat. I'm monitoring it so that we can start pause and then look into your questions directly. And thanks for checking, Richard, that the age is definitely 13 for using the Mozilla backpack. Of course, that can limit the use of the backpack itself. However, that doesn't limit the use of using open badges in Moodle, because while you can make that connection to the backpack, which we'll see later on, you do not necessarily have to have it in order to work with badges. Because even if you only have your working space in Moodle, you can work with the badges and the metadata is being displayed. So if you later on go to your Moodle profile page and you have already earned a badge, then you can display it. And so that way you can still work with them. The connection to the backpack really is only necessary if you want to share your badges with others, so with other systems in particular. So if you want to put it onto your own blog or into your Mahara or display it in LinkedIn, that is when the backpack becomes very important. Because if we look at badges, there's actually an infrastructure required, which consists of the issuer, the earner, and the displayer. So taking the example from Moodle and Mahara, the issuer could be Moodle and Mahara would be the displayer. So we issue badges in Moodle based on certain criteria, and I can then make the badges that I've earned available in Mahara by showing which ones I have earned. And of course, I'm the earner. I'm the person who gets the badges, so I'm in the middle there and can then always decide which badges I also want to display. So now let's take a look at what this looks like in Moodle. So when you are in Moodle and are a course administrator, and the site administrator allows that course badges can be issued, you will see a badges drop-down item in the course administration where you can manage badges and where you can also add a new badge. So just adding a new badge. What you would put in there are the badge details. So as we've seen in the anatomy of the badge earlier, you have the name, give your badge a title. That does not have to be a short title, so that can be the proper title of your course, for example. A description, so that can be your learning outcomes, a general description of the course. I would also include the number of hours, for example, if you are doing a professional development workshop, so that becomes also clear what effort was necessary in order to earn this badge. So pretty much everything that you would normally put onto a regular course certificate that you want people to earn. With the description, as you can see here, unfortunately there's no formatting options available. And you can also not use paragraphs or any other styling. So that's currently still a drawback I find for this description field because you are limited in what your description looks like. So you cannot format it nicely, use bullet points or use headings in there. So for the time being, just write text in one paragraph, because even if you put in additional paragraphs, those paragraphs will be taken out eventually. So just a plain paragraph, no formatting available, but hopefully at some point in the future we can add those can be added. So we've already looked at the description now. The next item for your badge, of course, is the image. And you can upload any image that you created on your computer because you don't have to worry about putting the metadata into your badge, but that's what Moodle takes care of. That's why we have this connection and need the issue functionality in Moodle to really put that metadata information into the image. It does need to be a PNG file. And at the end of the presentation, I have a slide where I give links to a couple of badge generators that you could use to come up with your own images. Or you could see that you also create a corporate ID for all the badges that you issue, which is the case, for example, for iMoot, so that it is very clear, this is the issuer of a series of badges. Next, we have the issuer details. So that is, in general, a name. And in this case, I also put my personal name in there. And you also always have an email address so that the person viewing your badge could also contact you in case they do not have direct access to the evidence, but want to double check with you if they have any questions. And a really nice thing that you have available additionally on the screen is that you can put an expiry date onto your badge. So per default, a badge does not expire, kind of a certificate doesn't expire, but if you do professional development training, for example, and you have a health and safety course that all your employees or a company that for whom you're giving a training need to redo every year or every other year, then you can put an expiry date onto your badge, either by having a fixed date or a relative date according to the date of issuing the badge. And this is really nice because when you look at your profile page, suddenly the badge disappears and is not available anymore once it has been expired, allowing you to quickly also see who has certain certifications achieved or who is still certified and who needs to redo things. And yes, really, Illustrator and Font Awesome are a great way to issue the badge or to create badges and then also keep them in a similar design of how you made the web page. So that is always good if you have design skills. But of course, if you're lacking certain design skills, then some of these badge generators could come in handy to create at least simple ones. So now we've added our description, and in the next step, what you would need to add are the criteria. Why is your badge being issued? And in Moodle, you have two possibilities, or actually three, if you look at it very closely. Namely, the manual issuing by role. So a manager or teacher or non-editing teacher could say, I want to issue a badge because people have fulfilled the requirements for the course. Or the second option would be issuing a badge based on completion. And there we have the two subsets of course completion and activity completion. And the nice thing now is when you do, yes, and so here first the manual issuing by role. And when we look at the activity completion, then you can say, okay, in order for somebody to gain a badge or a certification, they need to have a number of activities completed. And that allows you to automatically issue a badge based on this completion. And as you've seen earlier, you can do that on an activity level, or you can do it on a course level. And in addition, you can very easily also say, okay, the activity completion needs to be done by a specific date. And that way you don't have to always check whether your students have completed certain activities and whether you can issue a badge to them, but it is all being done automatically, like a number of you are probably already used to with activity completion already, when you want students to go on to a next activity. And that's how you can not just structure your workflow, but you can also allow for automatic issuing of a badge. However, you could also combine all these things. Namely, you could say, okay, I do want to have the power as a course instructor that I can issue the badge just because I can determine whether a student should get one or not. Or you can say, no, all the criteria need to be fulfilled in order for the students to earn a badge. And so that way you could say, okay, I as teacher can issue it, or the activity completion needs to be accomplished, and that is where this criterion is complete when there, so that you can decide all the selected ones or any of the selected activities, and later on the other screen then also who, because you might have set up the facilitator as well as issuing party, that you can still issue exactly the same badge then for them. Now the next screen that we are looking at is that students will also get a message about having earned a badge, and you can entirely customize that. What you would just need to watch out for are two links in there, namely the badge name and then also the badge link, which are both denoted by the percentage signs around them. And please do not take those links out, because these are kind of templates in there, so that once the message is sent out, it actually does include the correct badge name. If you take them out and try to put in your own name, then you would always have to change the message and could not, for example, copy and paste it in all the courses that you want to have them in. So since badges are currently not yet so frequently used, I usually change my message to also include information on the Mozilla Backpack, or that they can also ask me questions, or I also put a signature in there. So you are welcome to change the message for any badge that you are issuing, and the message is also different for each badge that you create. If you decided to issue your badge manually, then you will get a screen like this, where you can then award the badge. And like on a regular Moodle screen, you put people from the right-hand side to the left. But please be aware, as soon as they are on the left-hand side, they do get a notification about having received the badge, and you cannot take the badge away from them anymore. So that's just something to really be aware of. If once you put them into the left box, they are there and they cannot go with the badge for them. Now, Richard already mentioned the Mozilla Backpack. Now that we've issued a badge in Moodle and somebody wants to share it in Mahara, then we would need to go via the Mozilla Backpack. And currently, the Mozilla Backpack is the only one where we can store open badges. Once you have earned badges in anywhere, you can have them in your backpack. And in Moodle, on your profile page, you would actually make the connection with the backpack, put in your email address, which will be your login for the backpack, and then make the connection there so that you can upload a badge that you've earned in Moodle directly into the backpack. And once you're in your backpack, you have this screen here where you see all your badges. And in order to display them in Mahara, you would need to create collections with your badges. So in this case, I have created a collection for all my iMoot 2013 badges, and I've made that collection public so that I can share it. Now, if we briefly go back to Moodle, we can also display any badges that we've earned in other places and that are in the backpack directly in Moodle, because Moodle is not just a badge issuer, but also a displayer. So I have already made my connection with the backpack, and then at the bottom of the screen, I can say which collections I want to import and display on my profile page. Once I've made my selection, I do not only see the badges that I've earned on my Moodle site, so this would be the two top ones, but I can also display badges I've earned elsewhere. And there you see the glory of all the iMoot badges from last year and this year. And you as user decide which badges you want to display on your profile page. So you could also not display certain badges that you earned in Moodle and can just hide them. So you don't have to worry about creating test badges and they suddenly cluttering up your profile simply because you're trying out the workflow of creating badges and then issuing them, but you can very easily hide them so that you only see the badges that you earned properly. And when you click on one of those badges, another window opens up where you then see the metadata. So you see the badge image, the person who earned this badge with name and email address, and you see the issuer details. You can also go to the URL, and you have the badge name, the description, and also the criteria that allows you to earn the badge. And you can see their links so that you can click on them easily. And you also have the badge expiry. And in the case of Moodle, the criteria and the evidence go to exactly the same page. Oh, so this was the Moodle part. But what does this look like on Mahara? Currently, we do not have open badges integrated into core Mahara, so you would need to work with plugins. The first plugin is the Open Badges Displayer plugin. It was developed by Eric Roussel from Descendum, and what it does is that it allows you to put public collections of your badges into a Mahara page. So it integrates into the page editor so that it shows up under the external tools. And when you drag it into your page in the pop-up window, you first need to configure your backpack. In this case, I've already done it. And then you will see all the collections that you have that you created in your backpack and can choose one of them to display it. And in contrast to Moodle, we only have radio buttons here, so that means you can only choose one collection and not multiple ones. But because Mahara is very flexible in that regard, what you can do is just put multiple blocks with different badges onto the page, or you could very easily create an entire collection in your backpack and put all the badges in there that you want to display in one block. Hi, Stephen. Are plugins specific to your institution? No, plugins are always specific to the entire instance. So, for example, if my portfolio wanted to use open badges, then it would be available to everyone, to every institution in there. Now, the second plugin is the Open Badge Factory plugin, also developed by Eric Roussel. And what you can do there is a first attempt to actually also issue badges in Mahara. In order to do that, you first need to set up an account with Open Badge Factory. And right now the Open Badge Factory is in beta, so there's still a lot of development work to do, but you can already trial things there. So once you've signed up for Open Badge Factory, you can go into the Creator tools and set up your badge. So that is similar to what you do on the Moodle side of things, where you need to put in the badge name, give it an image, you need to provide a description, evidence, and so on. So that is kind of like Moodle. And then you can go into Mahara and go into a group that you created, and you will see a tab called Badges, where you can then issue the badges that have been created and that you made available for your Mahara instance. So in this case, you would be able to choose who should receive this specific badge here, and then also say when it was issued and whether it expires. And you would also have an email message. So this looks somewhat similar to what Moodle does, just with a different layout. And as I said, this plugin is still in heavy development, so there are a few things that do not work right now as expected, and we can still give feedback to it, but in general, it already works really, really nicely, and you can issue badges to people in your institution if they are a member of the group. Right now, there is no automated process, like in Moodle, where we can say, after having written 3 forum posts, a badge is issued automatically, but that can definitely be a feature in the future. So since open badges are still very in active development, there's also more and more features coming then for plugins that are being created. On this slide now, you'll see a number of links, and I will put up the presentation afterwards into the Moodle course so that you can download it and also follow those links, because there's just a lot of information to take in. Open Badges itself, that's where you find all the information provided by the Mozilla Foundation on open badges and all the work that they are doing, as well as a lot of resources actually that you can also use to introduce badges at your own institution, to talk about them, to talk about certain workflows, and what the difference is between issuer and displayer, for example. We also have the Open Badges blog, where you can read up all the news of open badges, of what's happening around the world. And of course, the Mozilla Backpack, which you would need in order to show off your badges on other sites. So your blog, LinkedIn, or Mahara, for example. Also put in the link to the Open Badge Factory, which we just briefly looked at, where you can, on a trial basis right now, issue badges or create badges, and actually also issue badges directly from the factory. A very good article about why you would want to use badges is the one that I put here, because it gives you a number of other scenarios and also how to go about introducing badges and how others have already accomplished that. There is also a growing bibliography available online, and of course also a number of Scoopit groups and people who curate lists on Scoopit and in many, many other areas, because badges are really, really taking off now and have already started taking off really, really back in 2013. If you want to see what the Moodle docs say about issuing badges, then you can go to those. And I've also provided the links to the Mahara plugins, as well as the badge design canvas. That is a really, really nice resource to wrap your head around why you want to issue badges and when you want to issue badges. So this is not a badge generator really, but more it takes you through the process of getting set up with your badge. So this is more of a pen and paper activity that I have available there, and also many other resources. And then last but not least, a couple of badge generators, but of course there are many more out there, or maybe you have net design skills and can just create your own badge very easily. And so now we've got plenty of time for any of your questions. And maybe if you have already started exploring badges, you are also very welcome to share what you're currently doing or what you're planning on doing. So please feel free to either type your answers into the chat or type your questions into the chat, or grab the microphone, unmute yourself, and just use the audio. Stephen, have you already started exploring badges at Whitepebble? Winnie, do you again have the keynote badges? And I guess the question will be for many now that Julian is not here this year, whether there'll be a Mojito badge again, or whether a very different tradition will develop for iMoots and the social get-togethers. Has anyone in the group already started exploring exploring badges or open badges in particular? I know that Lisa posted earlier that she's already earned some badges on Moodle.org for testing purposes, but anybody else? Oh, fantastic that you're exploring badges, Stephen. Hey, Maureen is working through this in the Moodle, or work through this in the Moodle MOOC. Fantastic. And Lynn, you create your own course badges. What do you use your badges for primarily? How do you issue them? Hey, Maureen, that is a really good point. You haven't been able to use them yet until they approve the policy. And that's what happens in the formal learning space, or formal education space, of course, that teachers often can't just issue badges, especially if it might be connected to grades or even a degree, because at a university level, a registrar needs to be involved as well, and it needs to work with the credentialing in general of the institution. So a policy would definitely need to be put into place so that both administrators and teachers are safe and know in which context they can use badges or in which context it is not possible. And also, if you want to issue badges as part of an institution, then what does the design look like? Can you issue your own? Can you just make up any funny badge? Or does it need to follow certain guidelines there? Oh, I'm sorry to hear, Joshua, that you lost all your badges when you did a backup and restore. I haven't had those problems actually when we did that on our Moodle instance. I could just keep them and then also duplicate them. Okay, Lynn uses badges for completing course topics. That's great. Vinny asked, how do you see open badges developing further, as in features and functionality? As far as, well, I'm very certain that the open badge development, also just looking at all that's happening around the world, is still very active development, because people are also still wrapping their head around what they can do with it. And so we'll most definitely see many, many more features coming. And just looking at the Moodle Mahara side of things, I would definitely like to see more formatting options, just so that it becomes easier to also view the metadata for a particular badge, that you could potentially eventually actually even just make a printout of the image and the badge metadata if you need to also have a paper copy. Because if you just printed out the images, then you would not have the information that is actually behind it. So that we can really bridge the gap also between a digital badge and a paper certificate, and kind of try to issue both at the same time. In terms of features, additionally, what Mozilla is still looking at is that others than just Mozilla can become a backpack, so that you can store your badges in an instance which is not necessarily the backpack, then also getting around the problem of registration, which is currently limited to 13 years. So, for example, the plan is for Mahara to become a backpack as well, so that we could have an instance, a lifelong learning instance, and everybody stores their badges in there and then can display it in Moodle or in other instances, but that the backpack itself is owned either by an institution, by a country, or by another entity, so that we don't just have one backpack, but that you can also be more flexible around that. And of course, around issuing on certain sites or even just displaying. Chat asks, in what kind of situations might badges be appropriate for an adult audience? I see the appropriateness very much in professional development and also accreditation. So badges could be earned at the end of a course, at the end of a PD session, and instead of collecting them in paper and putting them into a drawer, you put them into your electronic portfolio, and therefore make your badges easily available for an assessor. And so that could also eventually potentially involve recording functionality, that you might even have to earn a certain badge in order to be certified, or that we could have a series of badges which make up an even bigger certification, so that you need to have earned the health and safety badge, the company induction badge, and then also a team mentoring badge in order to go on to a next level of participating in certain courses. And of course, as Maureen says, that's also correct for motivation, because we do want to know when we've completed certain things that we have something in hand or electronically available that we can take away with, because maybe in a month's time or 2 months' time you don't remember how long that course actually was, or how many PB hours I can get or I earned in there. And so having the evidence there, and also being able to go back and looking at the evidence and reviewing that and knowing why I've earned that certification, I find really helpful also in adult education, or for in the adult context, in that learning context. So badges for me are not just the gamification aspect in courses, that you earn them or have leaderboards or things like that, but really also for certification, that you can very easily see whether you've completed certain courses or whether you still need other work to do. The support team says, in another session, some talk was about a set of proficiencies that had to be recertified periodically. Badges could be used to track which ones are current and which ones are expired. Exactly. Because if we just briefly go back to issuing the badges in Moodle, you do have the possibility to set an expiry date. And that is really, really great for times when you want to, when, especially in the corporate sector, when you need to have a course repeated in regular intervals. And so on this screen, if you look here at the bottom, you see that you can set the expiry date either to never, to a fixed date, or to a relative date. So in the case of a health and safety course that would need to be repeated every year, you would set a relative date, because not everybody would probably be taking the course at exactly the same time, but their certification should be valid for 1 year. And so you would say the year there, and then automatically after the year is over, they would not have this badge available anymore. And so we already have a really great number of features available for badges, and also especially issuing badges in Moodle, and it's fantastic that it ties in to the activity completion, because that enhances also the use of the completion criteria, and also takes away some of the work of manually going through and ensuring whether students have a number of forum posts, or whether they've already completed certain activities, and you can tie it to the badges. And for adults also, just to go back to your earlier question, badges are, I've seen them used already multiple times at conferences. So that you issue, normally you would issue a certificate of participation that you would pick up at the conference office. But of course, especially for online conferences like the iMoot, there's no real physical location. So that would make it very difficult to receive a certificate. And yes, the iMoot could use the certificate module in Moodle, but it is nicer to also be able to display certificates or your activities that you have undertaken during the conference on your Moodle profile page. Because normally fellow course participants do not see whether you've earned a certain certificate or not. Whereas with the badges, you can make that visible. So you can be very proud of yourself in having earned already 5 or 10 badges. Or others can also look at it and then just really see whether you're still missing a badge or a certain certification, and then one of your teachers or instructors, if in a more formal learning context, could come back to you and say, okay, we should look into it. For conferences, oftentimes they are issued for attendance. Here at the iMoot, presenters also receive a badge, and you can earn badges in many other areas as well. So as mentioned in the beginning, for example, for participating or for adding your Twitter account, then you can also earn them for forum postings and so on, or also for giving support to others. And so you have a number of areas where you can show off your skills, because ultimately a lot of times it comes down to showing your competencies, your skills, and making them visible to others so that they know for what you can be contacted, for example. And really, of course, I think it's not really going to divulge any information on how we can earn those additional badges there and how many forum posts we need. And yes, Stephen, we used to get paper certificates of attendance at some conferences to prove that we actually went there. And this is correct. And sometimes you kind of need to show, especially in a resume, your professional development activities. And so now you can do that also electronically. And now we've also got a mosquito badge. Thank you very much, Vinny. But I think other people would also like to have that. And thank you very much for sharing the link to Plainlin. Plain was one of the I think one of the very first sites that use badges. They are not using open badges, but use Badgeville, if I remember correctly. But it was definitely a very nice way of credentialing participation, but also just getting further ahead and getting more access to the system by having participated in discussions or completing certain activities, so that you really earned more rights on the system itself. Mm-hmm. And Maureen, that is also a good point, that you do find hidden badges, or that if you hide badges, for example, in Moodle through the activity completion, that you are encouraged to look for them or to see, to find out how you can actually earn these badges, because even when you know the criteria for earning these badges, you still need to do the actual work in order to get them. And yes, as you say, you are then rewarded with both the knowledge and the badges. Yes. And that's why it is oftentimes used for gamification and for motivation purposes. But of course, we could also decouple that and really use it as a point of electronic certificate. That can always be tied back to your institution. And that's the important part and the difference to just a pretty image, because it is not just an image, but it does have this embedded metadata, which allows you to go back and really verify that you've attended. And yes, Maureen, I distinctly remember last year when there were a lot of discussions in iMoot where people asked how can you earn certain badges, and tips were given. So yes, it does encourage also networking and communication if you're using badges in a community where you can then also support each other. Yes, you've been using the chat primarily, but please feel free to also use the mic, especially if you want to share something more or share something longer. Or I'm also happy to give you the rights to share your screen so that we can look at some examples directly. We still have about 4 more minutes until the end of the session. But of course, if you are out of questions or out of comments, then you don't have to stay until the end. Chet, you asked, are there any plans to integrate open badges with sites like LinkedIn? I don't know anything specifically. Right now, you can already put your badges or put a link to your badges into LinkedIn. Unfortunately, you cannot really display them yet, but you can definitely link to a public collection. The important part is that you make your badges publicly available in a collection. Then you also get a link to it, which you can put into LinkedIn. And yes, as far as I know, it is still just with a link for Richard. Maureen, you asked if I don't need a badge to have the metadata, for example, for motivation, can I still up Moodle to do this? Yes, you can still use the open badges there, but you do need to put in the criteria for earning the badge, because that is just part of the badges. However, you could keep the description very simple. And in that case, if you don't really want to issue it according to activity or course completion, you could just issue the badge as a teacher, so that it would be the manual issuing. Well, for that, in order to get around institutional complications, then that's not quite the way, because your users can, your students can still put these badges into their backpack or make it visible elsewhere, and therefore it does the badges do kind of become official because they are linked back to your Moodle site. So it would still be good to talk with your administrators about the policy, because they might be very fine for you to issue course badges, as long as you maybe have a certain sentence in the description of the badge, or that you don't use your school logo or the university seal or things like that. So I would still check with them, just so that you both know what you can do and what you're not allowed to do. Just to be on the safe side. Okay, that could very well be the case, that you may not be able to use motivational badges, but then you would not really be able to use the badge functionality within the course in Moodle, I would say, Maureen, because any badge that you issue can be used elsewhere. So in that case, it might just be easier to to make up an image and then send that to the students, I'm afraid, and not really go through the open badges functionality, because that always requires certain metadata. I would like to thank everyone who's been in today's session and who also asked questions to further our understanding of badges and how they can be used in Moodle and Mahara. And hopefully next year, when iMoot comes around, we have more information already, and maybe some of you can share more of your own experiences of using badges at your own institutions, so that we can look more into the content areas of how, and also the experience by then of how issuing of badges has worked out for you, how it works with the metadata, or especially in institutional contexts when you do want to use it for formal purposes. So that might be a topic for next year's iMoot by anyone, just to share also your experiences by then with badging.
Hi,
Kristina.
Sorry,
Hi, everybody. That you couldn't use the mic, but it was nice to see you in the chat. Okay, over to you, Vinny.
Hi, Vinny from the iMoot team. I was just going to jump in and say another big thank you for your presentation. That was awesome.
Thanks, Vinny. And okay. I wish you all a nice rest of the iMoot, and now hand it back to Vinny again.
You beat me to it. That's exactly what I was going to say. Enjoy the rest of the iMoot. We've got some great sessions coming up later. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And thank you again, Vinny, to you for the introduction and also making sure that everything works in here together with the Blindside Network support. It's really fantastic to be able to present to a worldwide audience here and have an online Moodle mode so that we can share ideas and experiences around the world together in one place, and that being online. So thank you very much, and have a great few days until the end of the Moot, and also see you afterwards.